Number 51. The Greek alphabet must have been invented by some individual who knew the Phoenician writing system and who wanted to have some way of recording Homeric epics and thereby preserving expressions of a highly developed tradition of oral poetry. P. Your hypothesis is laughable. What could have been the point of such a person writing Homeric epics down? Surely a person who knew them well enough to write them down would not need to read them, and no one else could read them according to your hypothesis. P's argument is vulnerable to which one of the following criticisms? So we are trying to criticize P's argument, and M basically said, well, the Greek alphabet, right, this alphabet has to have been invented by someone who knew this way of writing, right? And they must have wanted to record these epics and preserve something that used to only be spoken out loud. P is saying against that. P is saying, well, why would someone even write them down if no one else could read it, right? If this person had just invented that alphabet, no one else could read it, right? And then P is also saying, if this person knows these epics really well, like well enough to write them down, why would they want to read them, right? They wouldn't need to read them because they already know them. So what's the point of them even writing it down? M says to preserve them over time. I feel like you could still preserve them over time and not want to read them for yourself, even if no one else could read it at the moment. Maybe people could read it in the future type of thing. Let's see. Let's look at our answer options. A, it fails to demonstrate that the Phoenician alphabet alone could have provided the basis for the Greek alphabet. Should P have demonstrated that the Phoenician alphabet alone could have provided the basis for the Greek alphabet? If P had done that, if P had said, oh, the only way the Greek alphabet could have come about was from the Phoenician alphabet, then P would have actually supported M, right? And P is trying to criticize M. I don't think P would have said that. Like, why would P demonstrate that the Phoenician alphabet came from the Greek alphabet and that was the only way that it could have happened? I don't think that makes sense. P does not have to demonstrate that, right? Why would P demonstrate that? B, it incorrectly assumes that the first text ever written in Greek was a Homeric poem. First text ever. Does P assume that the first text ever written in Greek was a Homeric poem? I guess kind of, since P says no one else would read them, but also incorrectly assumes. I think that is what M put out there, right? M said, well, this person invented this alphabet to write these epics down. And so I don't think it's an incorrect assumption to respond to M by saying this. I think M put that out there, and I don't think P incorrectly assumed it. If anything, M incorrectly assumed it, right? And P was just following in that line of argument. And I also don't think P ever explicitly said or like very forwardly assumed the first text ever written was a Homeric poem. P never really said it was the first text written, right? We'd have to be kind of making an additional assumption on our own to get there. C, it confuses the requirements for a complex oral tradition with the requirements of a written language. I don't think so. The requirements of a complex oral tradition. What are the requirements of a complex oral tradition? I have no idea because they never talked about it, right? We don't know what the requirements for a complex oral tradition are. So C is not our answer. D, it attempts to demonstrate the truth of a hypothesis merely by showing that it is possible. Is P saying that this is laughable because it could be laughable? I don't think so. Also, P isn't attempting to demonstrate the truth of a hypothesis, right? P is trying to criticize a hypothesis. P says your hypothesis is laughable. P does not have a hypothesis of their own, right? P doesn't have like a theory too that they're trying to push for. They're just saying what you're saying makes no sense. So D is definitely not what we're looking for. Let's look at E. It overlooks the possibility that the person who invented the Greek alphabet did so with the intention, there we go. Overlooks the possibility that the person who invented the Greek alphabet did so with the intention of teaching it to others. Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, E seems like a great answer choice because what if this person who, invented this alphabet, wrote all these things down, maybe they planned on teaching other people to read, right? Maybe that's why they wrote it down. It wasn't for themselves. It was to preserve, right? Emma's saying it was to preserve these texts. Maybe it was to preserve these texts, but for other people to read it, this individual was also planning on teaching it to others, teaching others how to read the Greek alphabet. So if E was true, P's criticism would kind of fall apart, right? Because P is saying, well, why would someone ever write it down? Well, someone could write it down with the intention of teaching others to read, right? So then other people would be able to accurately carry on this oral tradition and continue learning that story, but through text. So E would be our answer here.